we have a lot to catch you guys up on.
The past few years have been some of our wildest times in our lives. We experienced a global pandemic that halted our lives, we became parents, we built a van out as a family, and completed a lap of Australia before resuming full-time travel. Now fast forward to 2023, and we have visited nearly 90 countries, and we've also brought an incredible human into the world. So if you are new around here, this is the story of Flying the Nest, an ever-evolving documentary about our lives. It started with part 1, which we released just before the birth of Hunter in June 2020. From my upbringing in South Africa and Jess's in Australia, to how we met, started dating, and created a little YouTube channel called Flying the Nest, when we packed our bags, quit our full-time jobs, and left for a year of travel. At the time, we were both 24 years old and dreamed of spending a year abroad. It also covers our travels all the way through the 6 years leading up to the birth of our first child. It has been nearly 3 years since we became mum and dad, and we enjoy reflecting on the journey we've been on. So in March 2023, we're taking the time to recap everything from Hunter's birth right up until now, as our precious new baby is about to join the family any day now. So let's continue the story of Flying the Nest with part 2.
Big deep breaths in.
Here's her head's out, Jess. So next portion should be here.
On the 2nd of June 2020, our daughter Hunter came into the world, starting a brand new chapter in our lives, right in the middle of a global pandemic. We spent the week in hospital checking off many firsts, like her first bath. And after getting the hang of the unknown of having a newborn, Hunter was finally able to be brought home. The feeling of expanding our family from 2 to 3 was like no other feeling in the world, and we were so excited to experience life by her side.
How cute she is.
From there, we introduced Hunter to the family.
You made me cry.
Some in person and some virtually.
Looking at me. Oh my goodness.
As COVID had shut down WA's borders, it wouldn't be possible for my parents to see little Hunter quite yet.
Produced the most beautiful thing in the world. Look at her. Oh my goodness.
In the first week Hunter was home, we started to learn the ropes of becoming new parents as we showed this tiny little newborn more of the world. Then it was right back on the road as we took our first family road trip. Packing up Hunter's tiny little nappies, we took a getaway to Bunker Bay to stay for 2 nights with a baby. Hunter didn't quite know what to make of it.
We can all agree that outfit is too cute.
With an urge to show Hunter more of our little backyard, we decided to go and get her a passport, where she looked silly but still cute. With passport in hand, Hunter was ready to jump onto the next big adventure, her very first flight. We didn't go too far to start, going up to Broome at the top of WA for some beautiful sunsets.
Heading into the outback, the adventures were only just beginning with our daughter, showing her the beauty of Australia as we camped by the beautiful coast to enjoy some quiet time with the family. From there, we returned for some experiences at home that we could never do up until this date, including an emotional first Father's Day
Happy Father's Day.
with plenty of gifts and sweet memories.
Oh my gosh, you're keeping those forever.
Oh my goodness, what? Wow. She was growing up so fast, and as we were just getting the hang of parenting, we settled into a routine during the pandemic. We decided to start Hunter in swimming school, and she started to look less like a newborn and more like the little cute buddy that we know today. She was rolling on her own and smiling every single day. So being new parents, sometimes you don't stop and realize just how much responsibility you have now and how much growing up you need to do.
This is the year that a lot of us are turning 30.
We reflected on the past 3 decades of being Earthside. Come October, there was still no plans for the borders opening. So for my birthday, Jess surprised me with the ultimate present.
Pack your bags.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that this present would change the course of our channel for the following year. Jess surprised me by taking us on a week-long road trip in a little tiny home on wheels. How?
It's our new house on wheels, Steve.
We loved it so much that we began to wonder, what if we did this full time? We'd done this for the first time back in 2017 for our honeymoon.
This trip has made me want to convert a camper van so bad.
And a few other times throughout the years. But as we continued to explore our homestead of Western Australia in our little temporary van, we fell even more in love with van life. So after a fun Halloween, Chef Remy and Chef Linguini, and a super fun Christmas decorating, both of which were first for Hunter. We made the massive family decision. We might have a little summer project on our hands to buy a van for ourselves.
We purchased a completely empty Sprinter van, which took some getting used to.
Wish me luck, guys.
But all in all, we had a big project to do. A dream with huge plans to renovate this open space into our new home on wheels. But we can start next month, as we have my favourite holiday to celebrate. A tradition we would pass on to our kids. My big love for Christmas started with us putting up our Christmas ornaments, which we've collected over the last 6 years of travel. From baubles to buying a van, this moment is when a new chapter of our story began, to turn this white box into a full-on camper van.
So right now, this doesn't exactly look like much of a home.
It needed windows, sanding, flooring, aircon, and more. The build started off a bit rough,
Things are already going wrong.
as we are not the handiest of people,
Oh, that one.
but some more handy people took care of the more intense bits, and we contributed where we could. As the van build was going on, the Australian borders finally opened in the middle of the pandemic. 6-month-old Hunter would be able to meet her grandparents for the very first time.
Hello, baby.
Yeah, she's excited.
Hello, baby. Hello, Hunter.
It was such an emotional experience to be reunited, and I'm sure so many families across the world can relate to what this was like. We enjoyed our time finally outside of WA in tropical Cairns. I decided to kick off more Christmas celebrations with the family as we started introducing solids to Hunter, which he instantly became obsessed with. Seeing her experience the little things warms our hearts so much. We then said our goodbyes and headed back to Perth. The van build was just picking up, and our final big achievement of 2020, getting a seat installed for Hunter. As we closed out the year, we celebrated a warm Christmas at home in Australia, which was our baby girl's very first Christmas. And seeing as this time of year is our family's favourite holiday, it meant a lot to us to experience it with Hunter, who was loving every minute of it.
Kicking off the new year, 2021 started with us heading back into the workshop as installation and electrical prep was done in the van, as we realised this build was no easy task. As non-handyman experts, we slowly realised there was just so much to be done. Framing, layout, cooling, measuring, seating, and just so much more. Between intense build weeks, as I was away from the family for most of the week, we ensured on the weekend that we would spend time together as a family. So we headed down south to spend time near the beach, showing Hunter kangaroos
Hunter has never met a kangaroo before.
and enjoying the moments we could share together. So as the final chapter of the van build began, we installed our ceiling and started putting together our furniture. And as everything started coming together, more importantly, we officially named him Cooper the Van, our little home on wheels.
This is my favorite purchase of the entire van.
By the close of our 3rd month of the van build, we installed a hidden outdoor shower. We started discussing where we would go once we began full-time van life. So by March, unfortunately, work had stalled on the van. So we decided to take this moment to head to South Australia, taking one of our last trips before full-time van life. We slept in an adorable, tiny minimalist home and reflected on how seeing all this got us so excited to explore Australia in our own little home. So the final step in this van was to install the kitchen. So we moved out of our home in Perth, saying our goodbyes to the place we brought our first child home to, so we could venture off in a camper van. A huge new adventure was upon us.
Before finishing up the build, something wonderful happened for this channel as we hit 1 million subscribers in April of 2021. We could not be more grateful for the constant love and support from all of you, who we couldn't do this without. My cheeks hurt from smiling. Shortly after hitting this insane milestone, Cooper the Van was finally completed. We are at the end. Can you believe it?
Come outside in 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm so excited. Why do I feel emotional? I'm so excited. With a dream in our hearts, we set out on a journey that we had been working towards for a really long time. Full-time van life. Packing up the house we bought into a storage unit, we were ready for the next chapter. It was such a strange and wonderful feeling getting used to living on the road and figuring out how to maneuver around our tiny home on wheels. But before we could venture out too far, we realized that there were some complications with getting our van approved as a motorhome.
Wait, you're just about to abandon your home. Let us explain.
And we were stuck waiting weeks until the paperwork would finally be approved. So, with celebrations deflated, a little travel bubble opened up and we took Hunter on her very first international flight to New Zealand as we took in the beautiful countryside, seeing dolphins and staying in cute tiny homes across the country, including this one nestled right beneath the Misty Mountains, where we celebrated my first Mother's Day with flowers and some yummy breakfast. We made it back home and it was already Hunter's first birthday. We didn't know anything other than life as a family of 3 now, and it just felt right. Hunter was growing so fast, and even amidst all the stress about the van, our love couldn't be stronger. Hunter Jane, you are so special to us, and your first year on Earth will never be forgotten. Then, after so long of waiting,
Today has been a roller coaster.
in June 2021, we finally could kick off van life. Alright, let me do it. First time doing up my seatbelt. For real, 100% no joke this time. It wasn't easy, but we finally got our certificate and we couldn't believe it was actually happening. Living on the road felt so right. The ability to pack up and go at a moment's notice was so fun and allowed us to stay in places we would never have gone without Cooper.
Full-time van life began, and so did our big lap around Australia. And though it took some getting used to, including breaking down in the middle of nowhere,
We've run out.
No way.
and struggling to find places to park our van, we've been having trouble getting into anywhere, and water issues.
Water's just coming out.
It was still all worth it. After a couple of weeks, we started to get used to it. We were already exploring so much of Australia that we had yet to see after living here our entire lives. We hiked to waterfalls, had picnics in so many spots, and plenty of beaches galore. The van, with the family inside of it, started to cover a lot of ground. If you didn't know, Australia is huge. We did a 1,000 kilometre stretch of Western Australia, stopping at a huge highlight for us, one that included a beautiful beach for sunset where we saw camels and ate way too much cheese. But some spots in Australia needed a bit more oomph to get through. Our plan was to see as much of the country as possible, even if it meant swapping Cooper out for a 4-wheel drive, so we could cover some tough ground and water before hiking to some more remote parts of our home country, seeing beautiful ranges and lakes to swim in. We weren't away from Cooper for too long, so the trek continued in the van as we headed into the Northern Territory,
Welcome to the Northern Territory!
our second state of the trip. Though van life was a totally whole new way of life for us, it was always worth it for the views and the experiences we could reach thanks to our home on wheels. We had plenty of new skills to learn, including the attempt to do some amateur repairs with 2 very unhandy people. I think we fixed our first thing. After slowly getting the hang of one tiny home, we wanted to try another unique way of living, boat life.
Hold on, Hunter!
Swapping from a home that drives to a home that floats. We hopped on a billabong, dealt with plenty of mozzies, and crocodiles, as Hunter enjoyed driving the boat with Dad. After heading back to the van, our little one was trying to become a professional walker, but it wasn't so easy for her at first.
Oh dear.
But she kept practicing, and finally, in the Australian outback, our little daughter took her first steps right before our eyes in front of the Australian icon of Uluru. So with our walking little kiddo in hand, we hopped onto a plane and lived on a remote island for 48 hours, surrounded by, as you guessed it, more crocodiles, swinging on a rope into a pool of water. Speaking of water, a lot of you wondered how we showered in the van without a bathroom, and we showed you how, while also finding some pretty cool spots with bathtubs along the way. As we continued to take Cooper around the country, we crossed into our 3rd state, seeing so many spots that we felt like once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, including this spot, which has been closed for over 30 years. From there, it was time to celebrate, as we had crossed all the way from one side of Australia to the other, as we made it to tropical far north Queensland. And we celebrated by going for a swim and trying to find Nemo. There are so many islands in Australia, so we spent the next week exploring them, staying in a beach-inspired tiny cabin, a treehouse in the jungle, and for Stephen's birthday, we celebrated in the Whitsundays, swimming at the famous Heart Reef to conclude another lap around the sun. The uniqueness of the Great Barrier Reef did not stop there, as Stephen took a solo trip to sleep in a hotel that was underwater. After all those tree houses, underwater hotels and tiny cabins, we were craving being back in Cooper. So we headed out to a secluded beach to hang out with kangaroos as Hunter made best friends with a little boy and his bike.
So by November 2021, it had been almost 6 months since we last saw my family. So my sister Cleo surprised little Hunter by joining us on a trip
I'm back.
as we arrived in the Gold Coast. And we went to every single theme park. You know us, we love a good roller coaster, and I don't think this is going to be the last visit. All of this fun with our family was making us realize just how much we wanted to show Hunter to the rest of our friends. And though our routines were feeling quite normal in the van, we knew it was time for a brief pause from van life. So in December of 2021,
The Prime Minister of Australia just announced
Today we are taking a very important step forward.
Australia finally opened their international borders after being closed for almost 2 years.
I think we're going to book flights.
We instantly booked a flight directly from Sydney to the States that happened to stop in Hawaii first. As you guys know, this is the place where we first went when we started this travel channel. It felt like it'd been so long since we'd booked a trip like this, and the world was starting to feel normal again. And it started with a 24-hour travel day that began with some COVID swabs. Gotta be cautious, right?
See you later, Australia.
We took Hunter on her first long-haul flight,
How did your first long flight go, Baba? Not impressed.
which gave us so much excitement for the future. We wanted to show Hunter all of our favorite spots that started with the Sunrise Shack, ice cream at the Dole Plantation, and Waikiki Beach, not to mention her first luau. The main reason we flew all the way out here was actually to surprise our good friends the Grinseries in Canada.
Have butterflies in my belly.
It was an emotional ending to 2021. And just like that, our second family Christmas slowly dawned.
Merry Christmas!
As we had a white Christmas with the Grinseries, watching as the snow came down and left a blanket of the fluffiest snow in the world. But before we said goodbye to Salt Lake City, we had a few days left as we squeezed in some snow activities like bobsledding and enjoyed the cozy fire. From there we headed back to Canada. We road tripped the East Coast and we couldn't resist another tiny home to stay in. This time a cabin. And as Father Christmas continued to bring the magic of snow, Hunter was in love with it. But the main reason we headed back to Canada was to do a full-blown winter camping trip.
Let's do this.
This time as a family of 3 in a cozy tent right on top of the snow.
Still can't believe we're staying here tonight.
Warmed up with hot chocolates, did some sledding, and of course some cozy fires. It was our most extreme trip as a family to date. But before we said our goodbyes to Canada, we thought we'd check out one last winter treehouse to take in the final stunning views of this country. As always, we were itching to switch things up again, and we did so with a crazy idea: throwing a dart at a map and flying wherever it lands. Oh yeah, and Hunter was going to be the one that threw the dart, which landed right on San Antonio in Texas. This meant that both times we've gone to Texas have been by complete surprise. Now back in the US of A, we did something a bit more high speed, catching an overnight train from New York to Miami.
Say bye, New York.
This year was proving to be non-stop in the best kind of way.
Sleep time. No.
And after all the crazy hikes and snow trips, and since we were now in Florida, I think we owe her a visit to the mouse house. We were about to blow Hunter's mind with a trip to
Disney World. With the Grinseries by our side, we partied at the Mouse House and loved every minute of it. We stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. We got to see Hunter's face light up in front of the animals, head to the World of Pandora before popping over to Hollywood Studios. Our little girl transformed into a Jedi and proved herself to be a true Star Wars fan, as she loved the blue and green milk, even if we didn't. What's that taste like? Not sure. But we did love everything we ate at Epcot. That's the fish and chippy. As we closed out our Disney trip with fireworks, a core family memory we still look back on today. Though I don't think we were fully done with Orlando, as the themed entertainment was still going strong, as Hunter traded in her lightsaber for a wand at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios next door. We were hooked at this point, And our Disney adventures returned instantly when we went on our very first Disney cruise. After living out of a van for a year, being able to have a trip to Disney with her in mind felt like the perfect trade. But we had one more trip in us before leaving the States. We spent it in Mammoth Lake, a snowy town in California.
Nothing like a quick short run across the ice.
By now, we had been 3 months abroad.
But we kind of miss Cooper, so we're heading back home.
It felt so good to be back in Cooper. And we knew it was time to get back to full-time van life so we could finish this epic lap of Australia. After a few months of crazy non-stop travel, it all came to a pause as we began an era of peaceful travel and exploration of the rest of Australia, which, instead of Mickey Mouse ice cream, we had eggs on the side of the road and Mum's famous van-cooked pancakes. Our goal was to see every single state, so technically to complete the full lap of Australia, we needed to hop on a ferry and take our van across the water to Tasmania. This is where we celebrated Easter together and put on an egg hunt for little Bunny Hunter. The serene travel was amazing as we licked lavender ice cream off our chins and headed out to a little remote and quite strange spot with a Japanese-style onsen. Back across the water, we tried Vegemite ice cream, where Hunter had the most Aussie taste buds in the whole group.
Hunter likes it.
Now, in the state of Victoria, we saw the 12 Apostles and camped out right above them in our van,
Why we do van life, guys.
featuring another Aussie classic, fairy bread.
Oh, this is so good.
Unfortunately, at this time, New South Wales and Victoria were experiencing some very heavy rains and floods. And after waiting a couple of weeks with no change, we made the decision to move on to South Australia, as being in a van whilst it's raining non-stop wasn't our idea of fun. In a twist of events, Stephen hopped on a helicopter and camped out in the Australian wilderness, as I looked after Hunter in the van solo for the first time.
What did this happen to me?
On this big adventure around Australia, we really had experienced a lifetime of memories and unique spots to stay. As we pulled up to Cooper Pedy,
We're going to be sleeping underground.
due to the extreme heat the town gets over summer. As you might know by now, we also wanted to see as much as we could see of this country. This included trading in Cooper for a quick adventure sometimes, as we took a beautiful train ride on the Garn expedition through the Aussie outback one last time. From there, we drove back into our home state of WA. We couldn't believe it, but 1 year later, we had completed our dream of driving a full lap of Australia.
We're gonna turn onto our street.
It was so emotional on our final days as we said our goodbyes to a lifetime of memories in Cooper. Hands down, the best trip we have ever done, closing the chapter of this part of our lives.
In June 2022, the world was slowly getting back to normality, and with our goal of driving around Australia complete, we could finally resume as a family of full-time traveling journalists overseas.
He's excited to go on a plane.
As we flew from Perth to Italy, there we began our travels in Europe, and Hunter crossed her second lap around the sun. This time in Rome to kick it all off. We'll never forget Hunter learning to cook pasta with Nonna in an old Italian home. In a brief side adventure, we went on the largest cruise ship in the world, which felt like a massive floating city in the ocean. You couldn't even feel it rock back and forth. We explored the Mediterranean, having lemon sorbet in Italy,
Do you like it?
and chasing bubbles in Spain. But there was so much more of Italy we wanted to see. So we hired a car and road trip through Tuscany, where we sword fought with breadsticks, explored the markets, and sat by to watch the sunsets as the colourful architecture of Italy shined in the coastal towns of Cinque Terre, and we honestly can't wait to come back to Italy in the future. So remember that first Disney cruise we did a year ago? Well, they may have had an offer to save money on your next one.
We saw that they were doing 20% discounts if we
Book on departure. So we had no idea where we would be 1 year later. Note to self, it would be Italy. So we headed back to the States to tour the first new Disney ship in over 10 years.
3, 2, 1.
The Disney Wish was a marvel of a ship. We went down water slides, had dinner in Arendelle, and partied with Mickey and the gang. But before heading back to Europe, we still had the Disney bug.
We are about to do something that has never been done before.
And we took part in one of the wildest experiences we had ever done. An overnight outer space Star Wars hotel. It's so hard to explain what this is, but honestly, it's one of the best 48 hours experience I've ever had and a huge highlight for this channel.
This is even cooler than I was expecting.
From there, we headed back to Europe as the serene adventures returned. We traveled to one of our favorite spots in the world, Switzerland. We were blown away by the beautiful houses, the stunning waterfalls, and the incredible mountain hikes.
Where have you ever seen sights like this before? Just going for an afternoon stroll.
We did a full tour of Switzerland, starting in Zurich before heading to the hills to go on a scavenger hunt, traveling in gondolas through the gorgeous hills, and once we were at the top, we went even higher into a mountain hostel, which for a country that's so expensive, we were shocked it was only 45 Swiss francs to stay at. But to end our Switzerland trip, we rode the Glacier Express, and as you know us, we can never say no to a train trip, and these 8 hours were filled with some of the best views we had seen all year.
So happy.
She said she's so happy.
So throughout the year of 2022, we were holding on to a bit of a secret.
I'm already gonna cry.
And even though we had said goodbye to van life, it was one of the most special parts of our life. So we wanted to commemorate it with something special.
Oh my god.
So partnering up with the amazing Ashley Spink,
We wrote a book.
she illustrated a children's book that we wrote called Our Home on Wheels, which you can get a copy of now. Okay, back to the travel. We made our way to the UK as we got to experience new shades of green we'd never seen before as we island hopped on ferries throughout Scotland. From there we headed to the north into the Isle of Skye as we traded the ferries for a road trip, and for some sheer luck we got some beautiful Scottish weather. Trains weren't gone for too long as we needed to head from the north right to the south. So rather than retracing our steps in the car, we jumped on the Caledonian Sleeper, an overnight train that took us through the Highlands and back into London.
We're currently driving around London in a big red bus, and it is Peppa Pig themed.
So after announcing our book, we realised just how much we missed van life. We've kind of been missing Cooper a little bit. And even though we only had a couple of nights free, we managed to squeeze a few nights in before hopping across the pond. Once we had arrived in France, we explored fairy tale towns straight out of Beauty and the Beast, which was quite fitting because our good friends the Grin series invited us to join them in the one place we always visit together, Disneyland, this time in Paris. Continuing on, we headed to Paris. We learned how to make macarons and had a picnic in front of the Eiffel Tower as we reminisced on our very first visit here that myself and Jess did 6 years earlier, and we dreamt of the day that we could bring our kids onto this merry-go-round, and that day finally happened.
Oh, and speaking of kids, we had some very exciting news to announce as a brand new chapter was slowly unraveling. We found out we were pregnant with our second child.
Steve?
No!
Yes, no way! Instantly.
It was such a joyous time telling our friends and family about this incredible news that Hunter was going to be a big sister. So back for my mum's 60th several years earlier, I had promised her a trip for her birthday, and that trip was to go to Japan.
I'm gonna take you on a trip.
A place that has kept their borders tightly closed until late 2022. So when their borders recently opened, I could finally surprise them with that trip I had promised.
Husband.
Starting off strong with some amazing street food, Hunter proved herself as a Parry Valentine by loving almost everything she tried on the street. The adventures were non-stop here, as Japan is just such an incredible country with a vast history of blending the old world and the new. And of course, we had to visit one last theme park for the year.
Welcome to Super Nintendo World
At Universal Studios Japan, where little Princess Hunter got to explore the colourful world of Mario and Peach. One of our favourite things in Japan was staying at this gorgeous onsen that is actually the oldest hotel in the world. Hunter was able to have special grandparent bonding time, and we continued to road trip around the country with plenty of vending machine stops on the side of the road, of course. Japan has so many unique modes of transportation, and one of them that we've always wanted to try was an overnight capsule bus, which took Stephen all the way to Tokyo. And speaking of unique experiences, Tokyo was one of the most mind-blowing of them all. We showed everyone what you could do with 72 hours in the city, and we packed in Mario Kart racing, sushi classes, sumo wrestling, and so much more.
That looks like a pretty tall tower.
Before we headed on to our next country, we spent a night on an overnight ferry taking us to the peaceful waters and streams of Hokkaido. After Japan, we quickly headed home to one of our biggest highlights of our career, launching our very first book and having a book tour where we got to meet so many of you incredible people who tune in every week to this little Australian family. Thank you so much to everyone that came out to support us and for picking up a copy of our book. From there, Stephen's sister Cleo joined us for a trip over to Singapore where we
Excited to see you!
ate way too much delicious street food and drank way too many Singapore slings. After a quick night at a capsule hotel, we headed to the world's best airport to catch a flight all the way back to Europe. Denmark was the next spot on our map, and we traded out t-shirts for cozy jackets and blankies. And in true Danish fashion, we had the most unforgettable Christmas vacation, eating street food, looking at lights, and sipping hot jockeys. Cheers! The cold continued as we began our Flying the Nest expeditions, a chance for us to meet the incredible people who make this channel possible and travel with you in person. The first one took place in Finland, and the Christmas vibes were stronger than ever as we boarded the Santa Claus Express and rocked up to little glass box houses, all the while getting to know some of the coolest people ever. There were so many snow activities to do, we could barely fit it all in. Reindeer rides,
Right here.
dog sledding, regular people sledding, cozy fires, crossing the Arctic Circle, and oh yes, we got to meet Santa Claus himself.
I warmly welcome you to Lapland.
But Hunter didn't take to him.
From there, we headed down to my home country of South Africa, where we would spend 5 weeks with our amazing family. Oh, and of course, once again, it was the annual favorite holiday of our family, Christmas. And this year was extra special as it was the first year it finally clicked for Hunter.
It's Christmas.
Kicking off the new year, this year, wow, how have we already caught up? We had the privilege to announce to the world our second baby would be a little boy. After spending Christmas with the family, we decided to have one last getaway, heading out on safari, where Hunter came up and close and personal with elephants and lions. Oh, and I swear, the largest wave pool I've ever been in. And from there, we began our second expeditions for the year as a group, meeting even more new friends in South Africa. It all began in one of the most stunning cities in the world, Cape Town, and myself and our new group flew over the city in a parachute, flew over it in a helicopter, and flew over the mountains in a zip line. We'd planned the ultimate 8-day itinerary through South Africa with 40 incredible friends from around the world. We'll never forget the time we spent as a group. And like that, good things must come to an end. And here at the end of our journey, we flew home one last time. So as we arrived back home in Perth, ready for the next chapter of our lives, we moved into a new place, a place we would bring our baby boy home to. But all our stuff had been in storage for years, ever since we moved into Cooper. We unpacked our old stuff as the final day of Jessie's pregnancy loomed. Oh, did I mention in her final weeks of pregnancy, I surprised my best friend by flying 10 hours away for a secret trip? Don't worry, I was given 72 hours and I was back home before the baby. He was still cooking.
And now we are home here in Perth, preparing for our second baby.
And we think it's time for you to finally meet him. We hope this all catches you up on the timeline. Thank you so much for watching and looking back on the years of memories in this ongoing Fly in the Nest documentary series. We appreciate everyone for continuing to watch, and we cannot wait for you all to meet our family of 4. Thank you for the memories.